Welcome back to the channel. Today I am very excited to be talking about Morning Star, which is the third installment, final installment in the Red Rising trilogy. The series does carry on after this. I believe there's going to be there is a second trilogy that Pierce Brown is 2 books of the way through, but this definitely, the conclusion of the first trilogy anyways, does feel like a very nice, if not so neat, conclusion, but it gives you plenty of closure, a very, very satisfying ending. And as always in my reviews, especially in reviews where I'm not reviewing like the first book in a series or a standalone, I'm going to keep, the non-spoiler portion relatively short, and then the majority of it is going to be spoilers after that. And then I'll obviously make sure to warn you before I go into the spoiler portion. But that way I just can talk more in depth about a book that if you're watching a review for the third one, we're already so invested in the series, there's not much non-spoiler talk to go over. So anyways, just keep my non-spoiler, spoiler-free. Very, very good book. I heard from other reviews before I picked up this series, and after I had read the first one, Red Rising, that the series just gets exponentially better with each installment, especially from the first one. The improvement from Red Rising to Golden Sun was really, really significant in my opinion, and Morning Star does not disappoint at all. I think it improves on Golden Sun, which was already a very, very good book, and yeah, just gets better and better as you get more invested in the story. Pierce Brown is not afraid to pull any punches here. The story is very engaging and gripping, and there's twists and turns that, at least for me, caught me off guard. So would highly, highly recommend. I do have just some minor criticisms that I'll keep spoiler free for now. The romance between Darrow and Mustang didn't blow me away. It wasn't anything I found myself overly invested in. It was, nice to have in there, but it wasn't anything. I don't think he wrote it, in a way where I was like on the edge of my seat or really invested in that portion. I found myself mostly just concerned, with what was going to happen to the other characters, because the other characters were well written, but I wasn't like overly invested in Mustang because of her romance in Darrow. So that's really my only minor criticism. But other than that, just a very, very good book in my opinion. At this point, Pierce Brown has proven himself as an excellent author, and he does not disappoint in Morning Star. I love his action sequences, and this was my first introduction to sci-fi other than Hunger Games. So he did not disappoint. I absolutely love this as a sci-fi series, and I'll definitely, it's propelled me to further explore the genre. I'm hoping to read, some Dune and Foundation and other Asimov later in the year as I find the time. So overall, non-spoiler, highly recommend. I think actually Morningstar I might put in S tier. I was just extremely, extremely pleased with the ending and how he concluded the trilogy overall. So very, very happy and would highly recommend. That is where my non-spoiler review is going to end. So if you have not read Morningstar, go ahead and click off now. This is your final warning. But now to get into the spoilers. And yeah, just carrying on with Golden Sun, he obviously left us off with like a Red Wedding type event. We find out, as I suspected, because you can't kill off your main character normally in book 2 of a trilogy. So they take Darrow captive, and Vitra captive. We find out she didn't die of her wounds. And the Jackal tortures him and keeps him locked in like a box pretty much on just giving him enough sustenance to survive for 9 months. And they actually... they fake his execution even. And yeah, so that's how it starts off. We jump 9 months in the future, and then Severo and then the Howlers come to save him. We meet a really great character, I think, a great minor character in Holiday, who's a Gray. She loses her brother right off the bat while trying to save Darrow. And we don't see a lot of her, but we do see what we do see of her. I was very happy with. So yeah, it starts off as expected based on the ending of the last one. Go, go, go right from the beginning, and it really doesn't slow down from there. I love the pace of this book. You know, for a 500-page book, it definitely doesn't feel like it. I think I read it in a couple days just because I couldn't put it down. Very much breakneck pace, and it never feels like he's glossing over anything by any means. Everything feels very thought out, but never seems to drag. So yes, the Sons of Ares, they rescue Darrow and take him back. And at this point, because Fitchner has died, Sevro's dad, Sevro has taken over the helm as the Son of Ares. And we do see a very interesting dynamic they have. Sevro's now in charge of this rebellion that they've kind of been, it's turned into like a all-out brawl almost. You know, the Sons of Ares have taken on like this terrorist type guerrilla warfare, it seems, that Darrow isn't like super thrilled about, but he's kind of taking a back seat to Sevro at the beginning at least. But ultimately they do come to a point where Darrow isn't happy with some of the decisions Sevro's been making or wants to make. He feels it's too brutal or just violence for the sake of violence without really the end goal being, you know, a true rebellion and salvation for the lower colors. It comes to a head in a really almost not emotional but a gripping scene where Darrow issues a command that's directly going against what Sevro wants to do in front of the Howlers, and who obviously Sevro's been, now that he's the Son of Ares, he's the leader of that whole thing, but or now that he's Ares rather, but the Howlers have always answered to Sevro, even in the other two books, rather than to Darrow, who's obviously the Reaper. Okay, well, my camera battery decided to die, so let's pick up where we left off. I was just talking about how there's this really pivotal scene between Sevro and Darrow where the Howlers are made to choose between the two. It's very clear, and understandably so, Sevro has kind of degraded into this person who's filled with rage and fury and driven almost solely by revenge, it seems, to avenge his father's death. Understandably so. He, at that last scene in Golden Sun, he lost his father. He thought he lost his best friend in Darrow. So it makes sense that he fell kind of to these depths that just became a creature basically consumed on rage and the thought of revenge. So Darrow recognizes that and really understands that, he's kind of got to rip the Howlers from, and really all of Sons of Ares from Sevro and retake control like he once had. And it's the right decision, but it doesn't make the scene any less kind of heart-wrenching just because of how close Sevro and Darrow were. And in the past they've always seemed to be on the same page and really working towards the same goal. But Darrow makes that tough decision and takes control, and the Howlers choose Darrow, and there's this great fight scene between Sevro and Darrow, and they kind of come to terms and forgive each other, and then move on. So Darrow's back in charge. And just a great scene. Pierce Brown does a wonderful job, I think. And then now there's this daunting task of, okay, it's the Sons of Ares are now in an open war with kind of this regime. So that kind of leads, they know they need more firepower, so they go to the Obsidian's home and seek out Ragnar's mother, who's the queen of the Obsidians. And there, Cassius and Aja end up tracking them there, and there's yet another, Pierce Brown doesn't pull any punches. There's another heart-wrenching scene with Ragnar, who's kind of taken that place of Pax as that kind of big, lovable like creature of war that somehow turned into like this giant teddy bear type character. Just a really loving and really great character. But he unfortunately, gets mortally wounded by Aja trying to take her down, and there's yet another heart-wrenching scene. And this trilogy is really filled with those, where he's dying, and Ragnar's sister offers him the axe, kind of, because that's based on their old beliefs. You go into Valhalla with a weapon so you can continue fighting her for glory. He refuses it and instead takes her hand, and then Darrow ends up finishing him off, and in this really touching scene. Heart-wrenching is the best word for it. So it's just another example of Pierce Brown. We're connected with these characters, and he's not afraid to really break your heart, and no one seems to be off limits in these books. So yeah, just another great scene. And Ragnar's sister then goes and rallies the Obsidians, and Darrow kind of lets Sephi know that Ragnar's mother has kind of been in collaboration with like the goals that they thought were like godly, and her mother, she finds out her mother knew the whole time they were just mortals, and they were kind of forced into this slavery and this horrible, like brutal war culture where only 60% of their children survive. And it appears Sephi, although is definitely at her core a warrior, and that never changes, never changes, but she does see the faults in her mother, and takes control, and strikes her down, and takes control of the Obsidians. And I like what Pierce Brown does, because he, throughout all three books, the characters really seem to stay true to themselves. There's not many moments of where like a character makes a huge shift from what at their core they've always believed. There's always undercurrents. Yes, they change, they adapt, but it's really, Pierce Brown does a really good job of, at their core, these people are still really who they were at the beginning. They might have just had their eyes opened or whatever. And Sephi is just another great example of that. They go and storm Olympus, but I think they might call it something else. They call it like Valhalla on the Obsidian's planet, but they go and they capture the golds that were the Obsidian's gods or whatever, and there's just another brutal scene where they have them captured, and Sephi just goes about executing them one by one. And although Darrow wouldn't probably have done that, and Mustang watches on in horror, he understands that to get the Obsidians on his side and fighting for the cause, that this was a necessary thing. And that's another something else we learn about Darrow, and I really like what Brown did, in that Darrow really, through all these brutalities and just all the horrific things he's witnessed and been a part of, it seems now he's kind of dropped some of the idealism that he's had, in the first couple books. Understandably so, not many people go through that, but he's willing to do, it's made very clear, he's willing to do what must be done, even if it costs lives that, at times are innocent, which is just a really brutal reality of war that Brown really depicts really well. And a perfect example of this is in this big galactic space fight between Roke's fleet and Darrow's, and they've recruited the Moon Lords and their fleet as well. But Darrow understands, so they're in alliance with the Moon Lords for this one battle, and then they're going to go their separate ways. And Darrow understands the repercussions that, even if they liberate the core, they're still going to have a problem down the road with these Moon Lords. So he does, he is ruthless, even in his alliance with them. At one point, he collapses some tunnels so they can't join a fight that's already won. So the Sons of Ares can take more ships and limit the fleet that the Moon Lords have. That's just the tip of the iceberg, it turns out, because at the end of that fight, he has captured Roke's vessel and makes the decision to turn on the Moon Lords' loading docks, which are like the cutting edge in all of the solar system, and really their source of power. They can pump out these high cutting edge ships, and Darrow knows that's going to be a problem down the road, that if they liberate the core, these Moon Lords are still going to have these this incredible fleet. So even though on those docks, those where they create those ships, he knows they're Son of Ares. He knows there's plenty of innocent low colors, but he makes the decision to fire on them and destroy the docks with Roke's ship, and he kind of tells everyone, like, I'm going to do this. No one's going to tell the Moon Lords. It's a reality of war. It needs to be done for our protection going forward. So just a great example of, once again, Darrow drops that kind of idealism and any idealism that he had left, and really has become what people call him, which is the Reaper, which he never thought of himself, in his own mind. He's never thought of himself as the Reaper, but he's kind of become this tool, become what he had to, just a tool of war, it seems. So just another, I just love what Brown did there, and the stakes. One of the things I love about these books is the stakes for the characters. All the characters are very real, and nothing. It never seems like they're going through these horrible events, but they are being shaped by them. No one's really kind of brushing them off and staying this pristine, great human being. These are the realities of war, and it's impacted all the characters, and we really see that. And that kind of leads off to the conclusion, which is where they storm Luna, and this big twist at the end, where you're in Darrow's head, so it's weird, but they are gonna, it's pitched to you as they're gonna free Cassius, because it's clear he wants to be done with the war, and kind of wash his hands. So they arrange for a ship to be, an escape pod, and they're gonna let him go. And there's this great scene in the hall where they're all shaking hands and kind of, going their separate ways, and Cassius says, "Yep, I'm done." But as he goes to shake Severo's hand, and they're doing this all in front of Antonia, which becomes very important as we find out later on. So as Severo goes to shake his hand, Cassius turns on them, kills Severo, we think, in front of Antonia, and Antonio and Cassius capture Mustang and Darrow, and then they go to Luna to meet the Sovereign with their captives, and Antonio was loving it and rubbing it in their faces or whatever. So we come to the final scene, if you will, or the final major conflict, where they're in the Sovereign's bunker with the Jackal, and they're gonna execute Darrow publicly. But as the Jackal is about to kill Darrow, Cassius turns on the Sovereign, who we thought, for the last 40 or 50 pages, we thought Cassius was this horrible human being for turning on someone he's reconciled with, and it seems like the olive branch has been accepted and extended. So he thinks he's rejected that, and he's just as bad as the Jackal, just this wicked gold that will sacrifice anything for his color. But it turns out that was all a ruse. Cassius slays the Sovereign's protectors, and Darrow, breaks free and mortally wounds the Sovereign, stabs her. So it's this great reveal, which I absolutely love, and I was totally caught off guard, because we're in Darrow's head, so I would have figured Brown, we're in his head, so we should know what he knows, right? So we should know that Cassius, like he's arranged this with Cassius or whatever. But I love what Brown did there. It makes it all the more shocking when you're kind of like piecing it together. Like, wait, why did Cassius do that? And then you slowly, it becomes apparent relatively quickly, actually, that he was in on the plan. But then you're still left with the question of what happened to Severo, and that's when I started to realize I was like, oh, he probably took the same poison or whatever that makes you appear dead that Darrow did in the first book. It's a nice, coming full circle moment, and they end up slaying the Sovereign on live TV and rally the troops and all this. And the last thing they do is, they have to deal with the Jackal, who's placed nukes all over Luna. So he's in contact with Lilith, who's initiating all these nukes or whatever. So Darrow, rather than kind of bend to the Jackal's will, rips out his tongue so he can't communicate with Lilith. They get the Ash Lord on the phone, and he understands what's going on at this point, that for the sake of Luna and a whole planet's worth of people, he turns on Lilith and the Jackal's fleet and ends it, and that's kind of the conclusion of that. And the final scene is one of the final scenes is kind of once again a great full circle moment where Mustang has taken control kind of as the new Sovereign. The Jackal's being publicly executed, but because of Luna's low gravity, he's being hanged, but he's going to suffer horribly, and no one is going to pull his feet like Darrow had to do to Io. But Mustang steps forward because even through all those horrific things the Jackal has done, she, at the end of the day, still has love for him because she's his brother, someone she grew up with and had known her whole life. So it's just another really touching moment, another great moment that comes full circle, and it's really every single thing. Checked every box I wanted out of a conclusion of a trilogy, something like this. It's actually, I found myself in awe. I'm used to reading like longer epic fantasies, and just what Brown was able to accomplish in just 3 books that aren't even relatively long. Red Rising was about 300, Golden Sun was about 400, and this one's about 500. So not even many pages to work with, but what he accomplishes in those 3 books, I absolutely loved. And I love the conclusion, and it's very clear, it's not all sunshine and roses now because they took over. They have a ton of work to do. All of society is, based on this pyramid structure, which they have to slowly, dissolve essentially, and they understand it's going to be a lot of work. And that's where, it looks like I don't know much about the second trilogy, but that's the direction it seems to be taking. Kind of, the conflict really, it's just the tip of the iceberg as far as the work goes. And I think I'm going to hold off. So in the second trilogy, there's only 2 books out right now. I think I'll probably hold off and wait for the third one so I can read those all in a row, rather than read 2 and have to wait for the conclusion, just because I'm a little impatient that way. But yeah, just to recap, I absolutely love what Brown did in this trilogy. To me, it's brilliant. Each book got exponentially better, especially, where he started with Red Rising to what he got to in Morning Star is incredible. I would highly, highly recommend. I think the series as a whole is A tier just because Red Rising is a weaker first entry, but Morning Star, definitely, an S tier book for me. I absolutely loved it. After I finished it, I kind of just sat there for 15 minutes and thought about it, and just everything, all the great story it told, everything it had to offer was wonderful. So if you haven't picked it up, please do. If you are still watching the video, please like, subscribe, comment. Let me know down below if you've read the Red Rising trilogy. Let me know your thoughts, what you think, how you think Brown did. So I look forward to it. Thank you very much.